The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. We have another person signing on, so we'll begin here in a moment. We do have a lot of material to cover in the hour, seeing that everyone's logged in. So I'd like to go ahead and begin. Well, welcome, everyone. This is the Report Designer Basic Training webinar, formerly known as Auto Tag. Today is Wednesday, June 13th, 2018. My name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward Studios. I've been here a little over half a year now. Maybe you have interacted with me through help desk tickets. If I haven't interacted with you yet, hello and nice to meet you. You may have noticed that when you logged into the GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. The arrow that you see on the screen is pointing to the raise your hand icon. If any time during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions and chat are on my other screen, so I may not see your question immediately. Usually I wait until the QA session at the end to answer questions, but I'll check occasionally in case something is posted. Again, this is a basic introduction to the Report Designer. We assume that you haven't used the Report Designer. Maybe you've installed it, but you probably haven't built any templates. You don't know too much about the interface or how to add tags to your document. So we'll go over the very basic, the fundamental things to do with Report Designer. Next week, there will be an intermediate training webinar where we'll cover more advanced features. But for today, the machine I'm working on is Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit. And I'm also using Office, also 64-bit, Office 2016. It's okay to use 32 or 64-bit. We recommend using 64-bit as this allows you to utilize all the memory on your machine when building a template and gathering data. Because sometimes you're pulling a lot of data and it requires a lot of memory. I think 32-bit only allows you 2 gigs of memory. 64 can utilize all you have on your hardware. And the version of Report Designer I'm using is 15.2.303.0. There is probably going to be a new release coming out this Friday. So you can keep your eyes on the download page. We try to have releases every couple of weeks. So you can always keep your eye on the downloads page to see if you are using the latest. Okay, I want to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. We'll take a look at what's within the Auto Tag and Auto Tag Manager tabs. We'll create a template using the ForEach and Alt tags to create a couple of simple lists. These two tags, the ForEach and the out tags, are the most popular tags that you'll use. We'll go over the input parameters, or what we consider variables, which are used to filter before you generate the output. We'll go over a couple data source wizards, more specifically SQL and XML. We'll cover how to generate a report and how to get some help at the end. Okay, we're first going to look at what's in the Report Designer Manager tab, or the Auto Tag Manager tab. You're not going to access this tab that often. It just kind of gets your environment set up. But we'll discuss the data source button, which is what you'll use to connect to your data source. We'll go over the Find and Replace tool. We'll look at the License button. So if you're using a temporary key and you want to update it to your permanent key, I'll show you where to do this. We'll discuss the About button and where to get samples and other tutorials after the webinar. Okay, so when you install Report Designer, there will be two tabs added to your Word ribbon, the Auto Tag and Auto Tag Manager tabs. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Auto Tag Manager tab right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a Word document, a blank Word document. And as I mentioned, you'll have two tabs when you install the Report Designer, the Auto Tag and the Auto Tag Manager tab. Right now, we're going to focus on the Auto Tag Manager tab. And over here in the data section is the Data Sources button. This button will allow you to connect to your data. So if you're using JSON, XML, SQL, or OData, these are the four types that we support. This is where you'll set up the connections. To the right of it is pods where you can load and create them. This is a really great feature that lets you reuse items that you have already created in other templates. So this helps speed up the development process where you're not constantly rebuilding the same thing over and over and over again. You can get more information on pods in our wiki. Okay, to the right of that, I'd like to point out this Generate Code button. This is handy for the developer types. It shows you how to generate the code from the template that you're working on for your Windward engine. So if you're using the .NET, Java, or RESTful engine, it shows you the code and how to reference the template and generate the output through this Generate Code button. Okay. Next thing I'd like to point out is over here in the Tools section, this Find and Replace tool. Let me go ahead and click on that, open this up. This is sometimes overlooked or forgotten about, but this is an easy way to update all the tags in your template at once. So within here, say you have created a data connection and you've given it a nickname and realize that that nickname isn't too descriptive. It was a little too generic when you first created it. Now that the template's getting more advanced, you like to give that data source a nickname that would be easier to remember. All you would have to do is come in here, find what, enter the name of the data source nickname that it was, enter in the replace with. This is what you want to change it to. And then you can come down here and you can either have it find and replace in all tags, or you can have it do just specific tags, maybe the ForEach and then ForEach and maybe an out tag. And over here, as I was saying, the nickname, you can choose other properties as well. But this is a great handy tool when you want to update your tags all at once. Okay. Next, I'd like to point out within this option section, this About button. Go ahead and click it. So this gives you information on the version you're using. So as you can see right here, the version I'm using is 15.2.303.0, 64-bit Word. This also, if you look down a little further, lets you see what version your license is valid through. So the license I'm using is good through version 16. This is a super user key, so you'll see that I'm valid to run on 50 systems. Yours probably won't be as robust, and you'll have a little bit different, but it'll indicate to you how many systems it's valid for. Also gives you an expiration date to let you know when your license key will expire. And another thing about this is this IP address over here. So when I clicked on the About button, this window right here, this section, will list all the IP addresses that are using AutoTag Report Designer at the time I click this About button. I'm the only one using my key right now, so all you see is me. Okay, next thing is the license button. So I'll go ahead and click that. So if you're performing a major update, say from version 14 to 15, then you'll need to add your new version 15 key here. Or if you change your license key from a temporary to permanent key, this is where you'll do it. You'll just copy it from your email, come in here, Control V, paste it, click OK, and your license key will be associated with AutoTag. Next thing I'd like to point out is this Getting Started guide. And there's a bunch of good references up here. Normally, I would start right here by selecting the Windward tutor. And this would open up a website with tutorials on how to do things, step-by-step instructions. We are in the process of updating our website right now, and not all the pages some of the pages are still being transferred over, and unfortunately this Windward tutor is right now. But this is a really but I have submitted a request to get this working again, so we are working on this. And once it is working, this is a really handy tool. It has step-by-step instructions. It even gives you a little GIF to show you how to do things with what we're actually explaining to you in words. So this would be a great place to begin learning how to use Report Designer. The next recommendation in learning Report Designer is looking at the samples that we provide. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Samples button, and this opens up our Getting Started guide. And as you can see, there's some step-by-steps, some tutorials, and some sample templates. What I'm going to focus on right now is down here in the Additional section. And so for every tag, for every tag that you can utilize within your template, we have a sample for you. And those samples right now, we provide in either the SQL or the XML versions of the data source. We will be including tag tutorials for JSON, but we just aren't fully there yet. So we're going to, for the first example, focus on this tag tutorials SQL. So as I mentioned, there's samples for every tag tutorial. If you wanted to learn about the if tag, you can go ahead and click on the icon, and it'll open up these step-by-step procedures on how to use the if tag, further instructions on how to use the else tag, and so on. The good thing about this is that it is connected to our Northwind SQL Server database. So you can actually generate output from these SQL samples. So you can see the output of the samples as you go along following these procedures. So great next step for referencing the use of specific tags with examples of each. I'm going to go ahead and close this and go back to our slides for the moment. Okay, we just went over the Auto Tag Manager tab. Okay, now let's go over the Report Designer tab or the Auto Tag tab. Here's where we'll actually create the template. We're going to create a very easy template today. We'll be using some ForEach and alt tags. Basically, I'll show you how to select the tag, how to insert using the wizards for SQL and XPath, how to create an input parameter, how to generate output, and how to pull your data in using the data bin. Now, for an overview of what a ForEach tag is, a ForEach tag does three things. One, it fetches a set of data or the specific data that, or the specific data that you want to utilize within your data source. Two, it can repeat that data through an iterative loop. For example, if you're trying to create a list. And third, it repeats content between the beginning and ending for each tags. The ending for each tag just tells the report designer when to stop repeating content with each iteration of the loop. The ForEach tag is a tag that you will use regularly. The most common tag is the out tag. The out tag is basically short for output. So when you're trying to display data from your data source within your template, when you're ready to display a number, an image, or text, this is when you'll want to use the out tag. And tags are simply placeholders for your data. The ForEach tag doesn't display the information, it just gathers data that you want to use, loops through the data, and repeats the content between the tags. The alt tag actually displays the data that you want your users to see. So let's go back to Word and show the auto tag tab. So I'm going to open up a blank document. Okay. So the first thing you want to do when you create a template is to connect to your data. So I'm going to go here to the Auto Tag Manager tab. I'm going to click this Data Sources button, and this is going to open up the connection editor. Here, right now, you can see from the connections, I have an active and recent inactive. I don't have anything active right now, and these are some other sources that I've connected to through working on other templates. So let's go ahead and create a new data source. So I'm going to select New up here, and minimize these for a minute. And so these are all the different data types that you can connect to. You can connect to Salesforce, JSON, OData, XML, XPath, SQL. And I do have a few SQL options here. This is because I have installed different drivers on my system to assist other customers with their templates. You can install different drivers depending on your SQL environment that you're using. In our wiki, you can find step-by-step instructions on installing them and also obtaining the proper drivers. But for today, I'm going to connect to the Northwind SQL Server database. So I'm going to select this last option right here. And When you begin your creating your connection, this first field up here is nickname. You like to give it a good nickname, something that you could recognize as the specific data source that you're connecting to. Since we're connecting to the Northwind SQL, I'm going to go ahead and call it Northwind SQL. When you're setting up the nickname, there cannot be any spaces in the nickname. Next thing you'll want to do is type in the server that you want to connect to. I'm going to connect to the mssql.windward.net server. And this server is open to the public, so anyone can access this. Instead of selecting the database right now, I'm going to move over here to the credentials section, and I'm going to enter the username and password for the server. And that information is demo. Okay, there's a couple other things I would like to point out. There are some options for display table, user owned, and user system. Hovering over those will give you an idea of the differences. To the right of that is read in metadata. It's checked by default, and we usually keep this checked. There's only a few times that you don't want to pull in all of your metadata from your database schema. But again, great option to keep checked. Now that I entered in my credentials, server, and username, password, I need to select the database that I want to connect to. Can type it in here, or since I already have my credentials in, I can click on this drop down, and it can give me a list of all the databases that I can connect to on this server based on my credentials. So we're going to choose the Northwind database today, which is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now, instead of entering all this information, server, database, credentials, if your DBA has provided you with a connection string, you can go ahead and select that button right here and enter that in. And you can use that as another way to set up the connection editor. I'm not going to use the connection string. I'm going to use what I've manually typed in. So I'm going to uncheck that. Underneath this is the root directory. This is for using relative paths within your tags. So if you're referencing sub-templates or images that are on a shared network, you can provide the root directory for Report Designer to use to locate those sub-templates or images. Okay, now that I have this set up to connect, let's go ahead and test the connection. I'm going to come down here, click on the test button, and right here you'll see the results. Data source test succeeded. Now that I know it works, I'm going to select add to add this new connection, which now puts this connection here in my active. Okay, now I'm connected to my Northwind database. So I'm going to go ahead and close this connection editor. Okay. After connecting to a data source, Report Designer will automatically show you the database schema over here on the right in the auto tag data bin. Here are all the tables and views that I have access to. You may have access to stored procedures as well, but they will not be displayed here in the data bin. We will see that a little bit later in the data tree. But these are all of the tables, the views that I have access to based on the user name and password that I entered in the connection editor. So now that I'm connected to the data source, let's go ahead and create a basic table. I'm going to go up here, Insert tab, and I'm going to add a table to this template, and let's make it 3 by 2. So now I need to use Report Designer to start tagging up my document. So for this example, we're going to be using this categories table right here. I'll expand it so you can see what it contains. And within this is the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. This is the table that we're going to be working on in this first example. So with that, let's go ahead and add a header row to the table that we have already created. So I'm going to go ahead and add category name, because I'd like to see that displayed. Description is also something. And picture will be the last thing we'll display in this table. Now that we have a header row, we need to actually supply the data from this categories table. So what I'm doing is I'm going to select right under the category name column. And when we add tags, the tags will be added to your template wherever your cursor is lying or is blinking. So let's go ahead and add a tag to this. I'm going to go to this auto tag tab, come over here and click on this tags button. And this will give you a list of all the tags that you can use in your template. Out, for each, if, case, and you can hover over any of these tags to see a short description. For the first tag I'm entering, I'm going to go ahead and select this ForEach tag. Now, when I highlight this, I want to point out a couple of things first. So over here in the Auto Tag tab, you'll notice the ForEach Tag Properties section. So this section right here lets you know that I have selected a ForEach tag. Always handy to know that you're selecting the right tag, and you can see that confirmation up here. Now, within this, there's a couple of things I want to focus on, the variable and the nickname. So by default, Report Designer provides you with a variable name for the tag, which is varname1. Let's go ahead and change this to something a little more descriptive to what we're working with. So since we're dealing with the categories table, we'll call this var categories. So this variable, when I press enter, it says, do you want to update all the tags? I only have one, so I'm just going to say no. So this variable is the name that Report Designer uses to reference this ForEach tag. But if you want to make it easier to see what the ForEach tag is, you can come up here to the nicknames field and actually give this tag a nickname. So again, we're working with the categories table. Let's go ahead and call this categories for a nickname. Press enter, and you can see my ForEach tag has now changed to a different name, the nickname we've chosen, which is categories. This helps make it easier to read in your template. So now let's select the data to use for this ForEach tag, since we've assigned it a new variable and a nickname. And there's a shortcut to selecting the data. So up here in the tag properties section, I'm going to go ahead and click on this data tree button. And this opens up our data tree. And here is a list of our tables and the views and the store procedures that I had access to. I mentioned you wouldn't see them over on the right in the data bin. You can locate your stored procedures through this data tree button. Okay. Since we'll be working with the categories table, I'm going to select the entire categories table, right, like this. All right. Okay, now, hovering over this can show you the data that you're bringing back. Also, if you come up here and click preview, let's ensure what we've set up here is going to return what we're looking for. Okay. Expand this a little. Okay, and this is exactly what we're looking for. We're bringing back the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. All the columns from the category table, as you can see right here. So exactly what we wanted to bring back. One thing I want to point out is that I use the preview button quite often to make sure I'm selecting the correct data that I want to see before generating the output. So you're going to see me often through this webinar previewing the data. I always want to make sure I know I'm working with the right data. So the ForEach tag is getting the data that we want to utilize. Now, to display the data, we'll need to use alt tag. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'll place my cursor right here to the right of the categories for each tag. Now let's add the alt tag. So I'm going to go up to the tags and select alt tag. Now I need to select what needs to be displayed in this alt tag. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight it, select it, go back up to the data tree, click on that. And now you may notice that the data tree looks a little different. By default, Report Designer knows that you're referencing a ForEach tag. So you see the VAR categories name and all the data within that ForEach tag. Now the option to select your tables and views are collapsed by default, as you don't want to pull your data directly from your tables. If you did, you would just repeat the first record in the row, however as many times as it loops through the data. So you want to reference your ForEach tag. So I'm going to go ahead and select the category name because we're working on that column right now. With it selected, we'll go up, click on preview. And again, by previewing, I can ensure that I'm receiving the correct data. So here, I'm getting the category name from the VAR categories. And the VAR categories was just the variable name for this categories for each. And it's return and beverages. It's category name. Good, exactly what I want. Okay, now let's add another alt tag to the description. For the description, come back, select alt tag, highlight it, go to the data tree, and this time, description. Last column, let's add another alt tag, select it, come up to the data tree to select the data, and here is picture. All right, almost done. Lastly, we need to add an end for each tag. The end for each tag tells the report designer when to stop looping through the content between the beginning and ending tags. So whenever you add a table, you'll want to put the end for each tag outside of the table. It's logical to think to put it right after this last picture alt tag in the table, but in actuality, so you don't create a blank row at the end of your list, you'll want to put it outside the table. I'm going to go with my cursor here, go up to the tags, and I'm going to add the end for each outside of the table. So this end for each will tell the report designer when to stop looping through your data, when to stop displaying the category name, the description, the picture for each record. And the cool thing about the report designer is that we support about 90% of Word's functionality. We don't support word art, so we don't suggest using it in your templates. We would suggest using import tags to bring in your images and logos. And since we're using Word, we can style the table any way we want. So I'm going to go ahead and select this table to show you how easy it is. Then up here, in the table tools, select design. And so for this table, let's go ahead and keep the header row. Let's keep banded rows. We don't need a first column, so we can uncheck that. We can even style it. So I'm going to go over here, select this drop down, and I'd say we give it a green style. There we go. That's how easy it is to style my table. Okay, now let's output this to see how it looks. So I'll go back to the Auto Tag tab. I can click on this output button, or there is a drop down for output. I'm going to go in and click on the drop down for the moment. And here you have a bunch of different output options. There's the docx, HTML, PDF, printer, RTF, Excel, SX, and PowerPoint, PPTX are grayed out because they don't cross platforms. You have to actually use Excel or PowerPoint for outputs of these kinds. And the default is docx. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. It's going to ask me to save the template I'm working on. Say yes. I'll save it to just to my desktop. Category name is fine. All right, let's go ahead and compare the output to the template. Okay, I don't need the data bin for the moment, so I'm going to close this. So over here on the left is our template, and over here on the right is the output. Now you may notice that the picture column is not showing an image, just showing the raw data from the database. Well, I'll show you how to fix that right now. But as you can see, other than that, we are displaying the category names, description, and picture. So working mostly. Let's close this and let's fix the picture. So I'm going to go here, select the picture tab, the picture alt tag. Again, you can tell that I've selected an alt tag by this alt tag properties. And for this alt tag, let's go ahead and give it a type. And click on this drop down, and here are the different types: base64 template, bitmap, date, hex template, number, and so on. For a picture, you'll want to use bitmap. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. And when I do that, you'll notice that it puts a little icon of the image that will be displayed. You can size this by coming up here and choosing different types of sizes, specified height, specified width, full width of the cell. I'm going to go ahead and choose specified width. Okay, now before generating output, I just want to make sure I'm working with the data that I want to be working. So I'm going, with this selected, click preview. Is it actually returning an image? Yes, it is. Here it is. So perfect. This preview is just giving me the first image of in the list. Just what we were hoping. Let's output this again. Yes to save. Split the screen. And this time you can see the picture column now displays the picture. Just what we were looking for. Okay. Well, that's the first table and our template right there. Next thing I like to point out is that when you connect to a data source, you don't need to connect to just one. You can connect to multiple data sources at once, as well as different types of data source, XML or SQL or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of text to this template just to separate this first table from the next one we'll be adding. Add XML table to view. And as you can see here, we're going to be adding a XML table. This first one was SQL. Now we're going to add a XML table. So we need to connect to the data source. So it's up here in the Auto Tag Manager tab. Let's go to the data sources, and if you may notice that now you see a green circle on the data sources icon. This just lets you know that you are connected to a data source. I'm going to go ahead and select it again. Opens up the connection editor. And you can see our Northwind SQL connection under the active. So let's go ahead and create a new connection for XML. And let's select XML XPath 2.0. XPath 2.0 gives you the latest and greatest functions compared to XPath 1.0. So with XPath 2.0 XML selected, let's give it a nickname. We'll call it Northwind XML. We're going to be connecting to the Northwind XML database this time. Nice name to help me remember which connection this is for. Remember, no spaces. Now you can either type in the URL or you can browse to a file by clicking on this folder icon. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So when you install Auto Tag, you get within this Documents folder, the Auto Tag folder. And within that, right now you'll see I have a bunch of backups. Yours may not have that. That's because I've updated my report designer with each new release. But in this folder, you'll have data and templates. And so I'm going to go ahead and select templates. Let me come down here to the XML files and change this to all files. And these are all the sample templates that are installed when you installed Report Designer. There's little over 200 samples templates that get installed, and we're cleaning these up all the time. And there's also samples for Excel templates, Podified or Pod templates, PowerPoint. These are all which you can get to by using the Samples button in the Auto Tag tab. So I'm going to go back to just showing XML for the moment. I'm going to go back to the Auto Tag tab folder. I'm going to go to the Data folder. And this is where we're going to select the database that we want to connect to. We're choosing the Northwind Data XML. I'm going to go ahead and select that. Once it's selected, I can add a schema or a protocol if I wanted to. I'm not going to right now. So I'm going to go ahead and test this connection, see if I'm able to connect to it. And yes, I am, as you can see down here. Data source test succeeded. Let's go ahead and add this. Now, in my active section, I have two data sources, my Northwind SQL and now my Northwind XML XPath 2.0. You can connect to as many data sources as you need. I've heard up to about 9 XML files being referenced. But all I need right now is the XML. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, now you'll notice over here that the data bin file looks a little different. We still have all the tables and views from our Northwind SQL connection, but now we also have our nodes from our Northwind XML connection. Here you can see the parent nodes and some of the child nodes. So there's another option to make things easier for you when creating a table. Let's say you need all the employee nodes from this, all the employee child nodes from this employee node. What I can do is I can select that and drag it into the template. Drop it. Now when I drop it, it gives me this this window where I can select the columns for the table that I want to add. I can add all the columns, but we don't need that for this example. So let's go ahead and deselect them all. We're gonna add the first name, the last name column, but we want the first name to come first. So let's go ahead and change the order. You can do that by selecting by pressing this order button, and it'll move it up. Now we have the first name, last name. Let's also go ahead and select the hire date for this table that we need. And we also need the country. These are the requirements for this table that we're creating. So with it set up the way we want, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And Report Designer has just created a table for me with everything, the ForEach tag, the out tags for each column, and the end for each tag. I'll go ahead and add a little space in here to make the words read a little more normal. So let's make sure that we're actually pulling the data that we want to see. So I'm going to go ahead and select this Employees tag, and then I'm going to go up here to the Auto Tag tab and click Preview. Now this preview is a lot different from the SQL preview because this is XML nodes as opposed to table columns that are formatted in a specific way. But as you can see here, as I collapse these, we are returning multiple employee records. We have a record now for Andrew Fuller, for Janet, for Margaret. So we are bringing back all the records. Okay, let's go ahead and select the first name and preview it just to see if we are getting the first name. And here, yes, the first name, Nancy. Exactly what we're looking for. Perfect. Now, again, we can style this table any way we want with it selected. Go up here to the design. Let's keep header row, banner row. Don't need a first column for this either. Choose a different color. All right, now let's output it to see what the style looks like. Back to Auto Tag, click Output, say yes. Split the screen, close the data bin. Here we still have our SQL table from the categories. And down here now is our second table that we just added using XML data from the employees table. You may notice that the hire date is this hire date is just the raw data that's within the XML file, and we can format this date to make it more reader friendly. Let me show you how to do that. Close that. I'm going to select the hire date. Go out here, Alt Tag Properties, click on this Format Data. And this is something similar to what you may have seen in Excel. I'm going to format the date here. I'm going to let's choose this long date style. Once you have your date format set, you can apply it. I'm going to close this. Now let's preview it just to make sure we're getting the right style I'm looking for. I'm going to click Preview, and here we go, May 1st, 1992. And that's the style we're wanting. Great, let's close this. Let's just output it. Yes to save. And here you can see the hire date looks much bigger, much better. I can even expand on this just to make it look better. All right, there we go. So we formatted our hire date the way we wanted. So we got a couple tables created that just display data, all the data from the table. But what if you wanted to provide filtering before you generate output? You can do this using input parameters. I'm going to close this. I'm not going to save the changes. Expand that again. So Over here in the Auto Tag tab, to the left is the Input Parameters button. I'm going to select this because this is where I can define my parameters. I'm going to add one. And let's go ahead and call this category. Since we're working, we're going to apply this input parameter to our top table, our categories table. I'm going to press enter. Here, you can give it a default value. One of the categories names was beverages. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that here. It's required by default, so I have that checked. And we can even give it a different, select the specific type that we want the input parameter to be. If we wanted it to be currency, date, integer, number, select, or text. Select just gives you Report Designer drop-down list to choose the value that you want. I'm going to go for this. I'm going to go ahead and choose text. Save it. So now, how do we utilize the input parameter filter out data? Let me show you. So I'm going to select the category for each tag up here in this categories table. Now I'm going to click on this wizard button. And this will open up our SQL wizard. Over here on the left-hand side has all our tables and views that we have access to see. In the center section here is the list of columns. This is what we're gathering: category ID, category name, description, and picture. And below this is our sort section. So what if you want to sort the table by category name? You do that by, let me get to here, by selecting the category name and dragging it into the sort section. And you can see here that it's sorting A to Z. Over here on the right is our data preview section. And here you can see the category names are all being sorted in alphabetical style, A to Z. This also kind of helps you know that you're on the right track in what you're designing. If you want to switch this up and needed it Z to A, go ahead and click on that and sort it to Z to A. And now you can see that this data preview section has been updated, and now the category name is being sorted in Z to A format. Let's go ahead and put this back. Now, below this is the filter section, or the SQL where clause. This is where it's used to filter out data using the input parameter that we just created. What I'm going to do is go ahead and click, make this just a little bigger. Click here to add a group. And then I'm going to click here to add a filter. So we need to select for how we want to filter by. So we need to click here to select the node. Go to the categories table, and we're going to filter by category name in this example. And so we're going to filter category name is equal to. You can click on equal to, and we give you different options: not like, not equal to, null. But we're going to go with equal to. So we have that selected, and we need to set the value. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this drop-down shows us all the parameters I can choose. Right now, I only have one setup, category, so this is all I have. If I had others, there would be a longer list, but categories, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. And now you can see over here in our data preview pane, it's just showing beverages, and that's because we set beverages as the default for our input parameter. And down here, here's our where clause that we just created. You can't edit this section. If you wanted to update this, you'd have to do it through the tag editor. We'll show you updating through the tag editor in the intermediate training. I just wanted to show you that we are dynamically adding the where clause for the categories input parameter. And you'll notice this $ squiggly bracket. This is how we define variables that you want to reference within Report Designer. Then you can also see over here the order by for our sort section. Kind of cool because it helps you learn SQL statement syntax just by dragging and dropping certain fields. Now that we set up the input parameter to equal the category name in the categories table, let's go ahead and click OK. Now what happens when we generate output? Click yes. And you'll see the variable part, and there could be many variables. For right now, I only have one. But as you can see, we set it to beverages, so it's beverages. Let's go ahead and change this to confections, another category name. When we click OK, now the output is only showing the confections record. Before it showed all categories, now we're only showing confections. What about XML? What if we want to filter this table in some other way? We can use the XPath wizard for this. So let's close this. Notice the time, I'm running a little late. I do want to get through this last part. There's one more part, and then we'll finish this up. Might be another minute or so late, but I'd like to show you this last part. So we've updated the categories table dynamically using input parameters. Let me show you now how to filter statically. So I'm going to select this ForEach tag in the XML table. I'm going to click on the wizard button because this ForEach tag is the data that we're receiving. So this is the XPath wizard. It has a different look simply because we're using XPath. At the bottom, you'll notice how that XPath is being generated dynamically, just like in SQL. What if we want to add a sort or an order by? We can do that by clicking here. Click here to add an order by. This lets me select what I want to order by. And for this example, let's go ahead and choose first name. Click OK. And over here, data preview pane, you'll see that these records are ascending by first name. Here we got Andrew, Anne, Janet, Laura, and so forth. If I was to switch this to descending, come back up the top, now we have Stephen, Robert, and Nancy. So let's change this back because we want to use ascending for this example. So in XPath, you don't actually have the order by option. We give you the ability to do this in Report Designer. So what if we want to filter statically, no matter how many times we output the XML data? We want to see those employees who are in a specific country. So I'm going to go ahead and select this. Click here to add a group. Click here to add a condition. And click here to add a node. So as I just mentioned, we want to select employees who are in a specific country. So I'm going to go ahead and choose country here. Click OK. Again, we have the option to have country equal to, less than, contain, start with. We're going to keep it equal to. And now let's set a value. Instead of using the drop down as we did in the previous one, let's go ahead and enter in a value. What do we always want to filter for? Let's always filter for those employees that are within the country UK. Click OK, and you can see down here, it's been updated. My employees is now only going to be returned for those with country equal to UK, and we're still ordering by first name. Let's go ahead and click OK. Let's output this now. See how that static filter works. Yes to save. Let's change it up again. Here's our input parameter for the categories. Let's use seafood this time. Click OK. Split the screen. And here we go. Now we're just returning those employees that are within the country UK. And this table up here, only displaying the seafood. So that's how you filter your data either dynamically or statically. Let's go back to the slides. I just want to make sure we covered the topics listed. Okay, so we went over the SQL and XML, the SQL and XPath wizards. I showed you how to sort dynamically and statically. We went over input parameters, which allows users to add input just before generating output. I showed you how to add a default value, how to reference that parameter in a tag and an alt tag. And then I showed you the prompt for the value. All right. You may want to take a screenshot of this if you can while we're on this slide. Here are the resources that you can utilize. If you want to look up anything from our knowledge base, you can do this at wiki.windward.net. We're actually revamping it completely. You'll see a new wiki coming out here shortly. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can reach out to our amazing support team at support.windward.net, or you can also email them at support@windwardstudios.com. So if you have any questions that you can't find the answers to, go ahead and contact our support team. If you need to retrieve your keys, you can do this at store.windward.net. And if you want to make any changes or have any feature requests that you want added to the engine or report designer, you can do this at ideas.windward.net. Okay. Next week, we'll be offering the intermediate training webinar. Here, we'll be covering more advanced ForEach Tag topics. We'll be discussing column-based instead of row-based tables. I'll show you how to show or hide specific things. You can use the if-else tag or switch case tags to conditionally format your output. And we'll show you how to import with the sub templates. All right, there's going to be a survey at the end of this webinar. Please feel free to fill it out truthfully. Any feedback that you can provide will help me and the attendees in the next webinar. Let's go ahead and look at some of your questions. Do have one question that was asked. Can you go over a little more about pods? Yes, I can, and happy to do so. That's a really good feature. Let's go ahead and close this. So again, pods are ways to reuse content, so you don't have to constantly recreate it. So in this template right here, say this table is going to be used over and over and over again. Well, you know, we created this one pretty easy by dragging and dropping, but you could even eliminate that by creating a pod for this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a pod. I'll give this a name. Let's call this, actually, let's first make sure it's loaded. I want to make sure. Okay, close this. There we go. With this selected, I'm going to go ahead and create a pod. Let's give it a name. 6, 13, 18 example. You can choose where to save this. Different options. You can browse, create a new one. And you can choose what you're actually going to create. Here I want it selected, but you did have different things that you could choose to create the pod for. Let's click this OK first. Let's click that. Okay, and now, where is it? Here it is. Okay, so now we created our pod, we selected it, we created the pod. Now, if we needed to reuse it, all you would have to do, let's add a couple of spaces, and let's go ahead and just show you. And all you have to do is take it, bring it in here, drop it, and that is set up. Now, it's set up with exactly everything that you selected it with. The style that you used in the table, the tags, everything, even down to the formatting. So when I go ahead and click Output Now, yes to save, we'll just keep it seafood. And here, let's close the pod bin. Here you can see, still have our SQL table. We have our XML table that we created through the webinar. And here is the new same table as above, but created through pods. Even has the higher date formatting and the filtering for the country. You can use pods in your document, your footer, your header. Great feature to save you time when creating documents. Awesome question. Thank you for bringing that up. Glad. Well, I don't see any other questions right now. So I want to thank you all for joining. I hope you got some good information from this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you now. Goodbye.